Good morning, and happy whatever day it is. I got to the house about a little bit before 3 this morning from a trip to Florida to see our first Hispanic graduates from the online program. They are certificate graduates at this point, so Lord willing, next year it'll be associate degree graduates. Anyway, it's a good day to be Lord, to be alive. Do you have as we into this school class? All right. Okay, what was the name again? Okay, let's remember this request. We, of course, have our pretty consistent list of needs. It's good when some of the ones on that list are here, so glad to see that Bub's here. Here, Brother Group is not at the moment. Sister moment, but let's remember. Summer, from school anyway, I remember from Penview and realized that Hope Sound campus is dead hours after the last, well, for a lot of people, not necessarily all of the faculty and staff is it dead immediately, but so let's remember students. There will be PR groups from our different Bible colleges. There will be other travels, and of course, I think we're all aware that vacation times can be wonderful, but they can be dangerous because the routine is different, and it's awfully easy to some spiritual ground. And that's where they are not encouraged in their spiritual walk. So. All right, Brother Bub, would you mind leading in prayer, please?
Lord, we thank you for your many, many blessings. We thank you for the one who graduated this week, colleges, going out to the field to work for you.
It'd be appropriate to express appreciation to Brother Paulus, who very often ends up doing what he is doing now, and always graciously. So I appreciate his doing that. Others occasionally when he's not available. We could give him a round of applause, but I don't think we'll take time for that. Amazingly, at the last lesson, last Sunday of another quarter, and asking one final important question. And it is quite an important question. I don't think I'll have to convince you of that in our culture, our society today. Is life sacred? The central truth, only our Creator, that is, the one who gave life, has the right to determine our lifespan. Key verse, whoso sheddeth man's blood, by man shall his blood be shed. For in the image of God made he man, Genesis 9:6. Now the objective that our lesson writers give us is that through this study, this time together, this lesson, we will be able to state why abortion is wrong. But notice that the question we are considering, we are addressing, is whether life is sacred. So that includes all of human life, the whole human life, not just life in the womb. So it applies to life pre-birth, from conception, or in other words, the abortion question. But it also includes end of life. So it covers, this question, is life sacred, covers suicide, assisted suicide, euthanasia. And actually, it includes throughout life. So is the life of the handicapped or the mentally and emotionally handicapped sacred? Is life of the terminally ill sacred? Is life sacred when quality of life is not good? Is the life of all races and all statuses of human beings, economic status, educational status, whatever status, is life sacred? And in our society, our culture, we are facing all of those issues. It is not just abortion. Perhaps the abortion issue has contributed to how much we're facing some of the other life issues. That might have been kind of the starting point in some ways that has opened and continues to open the floodgates for all of life. But we are indeed facing all of these issues. What a change can take place in a brief lifetime. Well, relatively brief for a few of us. I do not remember facing these issues as we do now when I first remember anything. And of course, that would have been a few hours before Roe versus Wade in 1973. We're not only facing these issues, but we are being forced, or at least pressured by our culture and our society, by living in a totally saturated society that does not consider all human life to be sacred. We're being squeezed into the world's mold, or at least the pressure is to squeeze us into the mold. And of course, the strength of that pressure is intermittent. We just came through 4 years where it was very, very, very strong. Thank the Lord, it is not as strong right now, at least from certain levels and from our president, and by his stated words anyway, and many of his decisions. But we're facing all of this pressure, not just the issues themselves, but pressure to conform, to tolerate. And someone has said, what we tolerate today, we will accept tomorrow, or allow tomorrow. What we accept tomorrow, or today, we will embrace tomorrow. And then someone added to that, what we embrace today, we will promote tomorrow. And you can trace that progression, if not in your own heart and life, though be very alert, because when we are totally immersed, it's awfully hard not for some of it to start rubbing off or squeezing in. But if not in your own heart and life, and I trust it isn't so, I believe it's not so, at least to a huge extent, but we can trace that easily. Tolerate, accept, embrace, promote in our society as a whole. And as we saw, especially in the previous 4 years, it's not only promote, it's export worldwide. We are in the battle of our lives, we're in the battle for our lives, and we are in the battle for life. And speaking of the change in a brief lifetime, Albert Mohler, who has a podcast called The Briefing, a daily analysis of current issues from a biblical worldview perspective. Worthwhile, if you're interested, just look for The Briefing as a podcast, or Albert Mohler, M-O-H-L-E-R. He made an observation of the teaching power of the law. I say in a brief lifetime, and that covers several of us who are pre-Roe versus Wade. But I think there are some here. I was going to ask Julia when she was born. I know you don't ask any woman her age, but I was going to ask when she was born, what year. I won't do that, but I would guess there are a few here who have never known anything, at least until 2022, except Roe v. Wade being the law of the land. No, Brother McMillan, you're not one of those. I'm sure of that. And Albert Mohler traces the effect of that. Children, young people who have grown up with nothing else, never knowing anything else themselves, it has a powerful effect on their own thinking. It's just not the same question or issue. It's normal for them, the teaching power of the law. And particularly, that can go either way. Good laws can help teach, but bad laws also teach. So that's the world we're in. That's what we're facing. What should be our response as believers, as holiness believers? Well, one option is just ignore it. I mean, it's not us. We're not doing that. And what can we do anyway? We're just a handful, so what could we do? Just ignore it. That doesn't sound a whole lot to me like the Spirit of Christ. In the Gospels, I don't think we see him ignoring too many social injustices. Another option is, well, we cannot ignore, we can critique it, we can fight against it, but largely ourselves, so that we're pretty much isolated from what's really going on out there. We're just onlookers and saying, that's awful, and we'd better believe it's awful, and we'd better not let it get in here. Well, the last part of that, I think, is good. We'd better not let it get in here. I already mentioned that. And that danger is always, always present, and so insidious that the biggest danger probably is its encroachment that we are not even alert to. But I don't think just being onlookers and criticizing what's going on out there, here among ourselves, that's almost like preaching to a choir. That's a good phrase, isn't it? I think we ought to see if we can get that become popular, catch on, preaching to the choir. Well, option 3 is we can recognize that ignoring and isolating ourselves is not what God has called us to do, not why he has us here in the world, not why he doesn't save us and then teleport us up to heaven immediately. He leaves us here. And part of the reason is to stand for righteousness and judgment, even in the society, even in the culture. So we can choose to engage. We can challenge these issues, these perspectives, these beliefs. And we can critique them, and we can do so biblically. That is good, but I'll talk more later of why I'm not sure that if we only address it biblically or from a basis of the Bible, that is pulling out biblical references and using that as our put the first foot forward, so to speak. I'm not sure that's the total or even at times the best answer. Yes, I hope you'll understand by the time I'm done, I'm not undermining or lowering the role of the Bible. It is the basis, it is the foundation. But in communicating and in addressing the issue with a world who doesn't know the Bible, that may not be as effective at times. So a fourth option is to engage and challenge and critique biblically, yes, but also rationally, philosophically, scientifically. Arguments in the realm of which our culture and our people tend to think. And there are some pretty good, solid, rational, philosophical, and scientific arguments for the value of human life, and especially thinking, well, all along the range, that these are indeed human lives, and therefore, if any human life is sacred, is worthwhile, should be defended and preserved, then all human life should be. And of course, the fifth option is to not only, as we have opportunity and on occasion, engage, challenge, critique, but we can dedicate ourselves to this particular realm of social justice. It can be, as it were, our calling, our service, our ministry. But we are here to be culture changers, to be salt and light in the realities of our current culture. I'm afraid that often we, especially as conservative people, holiness people, or even more conservative holiness people, sometimes we are reluctant to think of those latter options. We may even view them with some degree of suspicion. Yes, biblical arguments, yeah, we can see that. Maybe even be pretty strong on that, but rational and philosophical and scientific and just giving ourselves, making this our life's work, too much engagement with the world, I think we're sometimes reluctant, hesitant, maybe even suspicious. Sometimes I think we have the attitude, our job is to just evangelize, try to get people saved. Now, of course, we could pause and say, are we indeed evangelizing? And sure, there's a tension here. And sure, you can go overboard into the realms that I've been mentioning here. You can become nothing more than a social justice club. There are tensions, but pulling back from these realms, and a lot of others that could be mentioned, some of the other questions with which we've dealt, that really is not our heritage as holiness people. Think back to Wesley, who was very involved in social justice. In fact, what God did through him no doubt preserved England from the same horrors of revolution that the French went through, who did not have a Wesley. Think of the late 19th century, early 20th century holiness movement, Salvation Army. Or if you really want our heritage, think of Jesus. Was he disengaged from the social injustices of his day? And did he call us to that isolation, or did he call us to engagement? You might want to reread the last part of Matthew chapter 25. Inasmuch as ye have done it unto the least of these, you have done it unto me. Now, if we are going to address this issue in any of the latter three options, engage biblically plus, or even dedicate ourselves to this realm of justice, especially the last one, but all of those levels, it'll take some investment on our part. It'll take some effort, some investigation, some preparation, some learning. And it will take our truly fleshing out our church's motto, seeking first the kingdom of God. It'll involve a degree of laying down our lives for the cause of life. And obviously we can't give ourselves individually fully to every worthy cause there is out there, nor should we. It's the whole body of Christ that addresses the needs of our day. But I think for all of us, we can be more aware, we can be more engaged than we are. We can pray and go, or give and go in this area, the question of the sacredness and the sanctity of human life, just as we talk about pray or give or go in the world, in the matter of world evangelism, the Great Commission. And I like to always remember that yes, pray, yes, give, but between give and go, there's a whole lot of other options that we usually don't mention. So don't restrict it to just those three. Okay, I'm praying, I'm giving, I'm either going or God has made it clear I'm not supposed to go. So there's nothing else I can do, one of those three. No, there's lots of options in between there that you can get engaged in many, many ways, many levels, whether it be world evangelism, missions, or whether it be the sanctity of human life. So, in the remaining little time, how can we become more aware and prepare ourselves a little bit better and engage then, be ready to engage as God gives us opportunity? Well, biblically, the key verse I think is key because it does say, "Whoso sheddeth man's blood," that is, if you take life, "by man shall his blood be shed, for in the image of God made he man." The sanctity of human life is based on creation order and the fact that in the image of God made he man. So that means all human beings, bar none, are inherently, essentially image bearers. By essentially, I mean in their very essence, not by any condition in which they live, not by any accidental property they have, such as a handicap, such as a terminal illness, such as being in the womb. No, not by any of those things. In their very nature and essence, they are image bearers, and therefore their life is sacred. "Inasmuch as ye have done it to one of these," Jesus says, "you have done it to me." And Wingrove Taylor, preaching on Matthew 25, said, every person we should think and believe, he's Jesus. She's Jesus. So taking a human life is destroying the image of God, and no one has that right. Which, by the way, is an argument against all sin in your life and mine, because that's destroying the image of God in us as well. And it's an argument for holiness, because the only way we can fully reflect the image of God is to have that image recreated in us through the cleansing of the sin that destroys it. So we could ask ourselves the question, am I destroying God's image in myself in any way by the choices I make and the way I live? But it also argues against all attitudes and positions, policies, and practices that do not honor and seek to preserve human life, or that in any way actively undercut and destroy human life. I would love to follow Brother Sheldon's example and work through the biblical passages in the quarterly, but for sake of time, I will remind you that you have that opportunity and encourage you to do so. There are many, many biblical passages, the ones in the lesson and others that you can find readily, that support this particular truth of the biblical worldview. Life is sacred because human life bears the image of God. I would like to just mention that in thinking about the sanctity of human life, there are difficult questions about the right to die. In this year, this age of amazing, unbelievable medical intervention possibilities, I think it is legitimate to ask ourselves, is there the possibility of erring on the opposite side? One side is killing that which God would leave alive, and we're responsible for that. But is there the possibility of keeping alive that which God would let die? Those are challenging issues. I'm not sure we will always know in our human limitations the absolute right answer in some of those areas. So God give us wisdom in our own cases. Many of us have or will face that, whether our own life or a life of a loved one. And then God give us grace. Grace for ourselves when we've made a decision, and then later perhaps doubts and questions, or other people doubt and question us. And grace for others who may make a decision about when to pull the plug, as we say, that you don't agree with. That's a whole different realm, I believe, than knowing willful choices, on either side of the question. But I have chosen, again, to go a little different direction because I think, by and large, we are probably pretty well aware of the biblical truth, the biblical answer to the question of, is life sacred? And although we may have room to improve our understanding and maybe pull it together and get it more at hand or in mind so that when we have an opportunity to share that, we can readily and with a cogent, well-founded biblical argument. And I repeat once again, this is the ultimate basis of our belief and practice because this is truth, as God who spoke it is truth. But sadly, in our culture, the Bible, for many, means very little or nothing. Because they already know, sometimes because they've heard it from Christian teachers, that the Bible is nothing more than a human book, a collection of myths. So it means nothing more to them than the Book of Mormon would, for example, to you and me. Would you consider it right to guide your life by the Book of Mormon? Well, I think we need to try to understand there are people all around us who would think it just as wrong to guide their lives by this collection of human stories, ancient ones at that, of different cultures that really have nothing to do with us. It just doesn't make sense to guide your life by something like that. I hope you can feel a little bit of how, that's so foreign to us. Thank God it's so foreign to us. And it's totally wrong, but I hope you can understand how ones who have grown up immersed in that type of thinking, it's totally irrational. It's ridiculous. Just as much, I think. They would see it just as strongly as we would to guide our lives by Book of Mormon or lots of things you can find on the internet and elsewhere. That's why I say sometimes the best starting point in talking with those people who would view the Bible, and for them it's perfectly natural and logical, they would view the Bible that way, the Bible may not be the best first starting point. So I would like to share with you something that I heard first through a partners banquet partnership banquet held by Expectations Women's Center. And lest I run out of time, I know miracles can happen, things that have never happened before can happen. Let me jump to the end and mention the resources that are available to us as we feel God leading us at whatever level, from just more engagement than we have had, more awareness and engagement, or even if this is a calling God places on your life, dedicate yourself to this particular realm as your Christian service to our society. There are plenty of resources, many of them online. You can even search for something like non-religious arguments against abortion, for the type of arguments that I'm talking about and right now. And you can also find many that would be biblically based. We have right in our area, less than 15 miles away, a great resource and a great opportunity. Expectations Women's Center has a center here in Lewisburg, just off behind La Primavera restaurant there, and then one in Williamsport. And it's connected with a much broader CareNet, is it, or something like that, that's, I think, nationwide, of Christian answers and Christian service to people who are considering abortion, and even those who have had abortions. Because let's add this. Abortion is wrong, euthanasia is wrong, but God forgives any sin that is honestly confessed and repented of. And those people need compassion and understanding. I can't go into that, but talk to my wife because she is on the Expectations Board, and actually Pastor McMillan is also on the Expectations Board. So if God is tugging at your heart at all and guiding you at all, connect with Expectations, check out things online. But it was through a speaker at the Expectations Partnership Banquet a number of years ago now, who shared how to give an answer about the sacredness of human life in 5 minutes or less. His name is Scott something or other. I found him online by just saying Scott and Against Abortion. He works with, I think he founded Life Training Institute, prolifetraining.com, prolifetraining.com, that exists for the one purpose: to empower others with the knowledge and conviction necessary to make the case for life that changes hearts and minds. So suppose you have just 5 minutes, which is what I have, to graciously defend your pro-life beliefs with friends or classmates. Can you do it with rational arguments? What should you say? And how can you simplify the abortion issue for those who think it's hopelessly complex? Well, here's how to succeed in 3 easy steps. 1, clarify the issue. Pro-life advocates contend that elective abortion unjustly takes the life of a defenseless human being. This simplifies the abortion controversy by focusing public attention on just one question. Is there an unborn member, is the unborn a member of the human family? Is he a human being? If so, killing him or her to benefit others is a serious moral wrong. It treats the distinct human being with his or her own inherent moral worth as nothing more than a disposable instrument, a blob of tissue. Conversely, if the unborn are not human, killing them for any reason requires no more justification than having a tooth pulled or killing a mosquito. In other words, arguments based on choice or privacy miss the point entirely. Would anyone that you know support a mother killing her toddler in the name of choice, and who decides a year or 2 after? You read articles about people who get put in jail because they left their kid in the car in the summer with the windows just cracked or something. Clearly, if the unborn are human like toddlers, We shouldn't kill them in the name of choice any more than we would a toddler. Again, this debate, or any more than we would the person who is considering killing the unborn. Again, this debate is about just one question: what is the unborn? At this point, some may object that your comparisons are not fair, that killing a fetus is morally different than killing a toddler. But that's the issue, isn't it? Are the unborn, like toddlers, members of the human family? That is the one issue that matters. Clarify the issue. Remind your critics that you are vigorously pro-choice when it comes to women choosing a number of moral goods. You support a woman's right to choose her own doctor, to choose her own husband, most of the time, to choose her own job, to choose her own religion, to name a few. These are among the many choices that you fully support for women. But some choices are wrong, like killing innocent human beings simply because they are in the way and cannot defend themselves. No, we shouldn't be allowed to choose that. That's point one. Bring it down to this central issue: is that a human being or no? In fact, I understand that when the Supreme Court justices were debating what became Roe versus Wade, I think in the opinions they wrote, if it could be demonstrated that this fetus is a human being, then there wouldn't be an issue here. Science has advanced much more since then. And look at the point of special interest in your quarterly for some of that evidence. Point two, defend your pro-life position with science and philosophy. Some of us don't like those words, but hear me out, or hear him out. Scientifically, we know that from the earliest stages of development, the unborn are distinct, living, and whole human beings. Leading embryology books confirm this. An example from some authors: a zygote is the beginning of a new human being. Human development begins at fertilization, the process during which a male gamete or sperm unites with a female gamete or oocyte to form a single cell called a zygote. This highly specialized, totipotent soul marks the beginning of each of us as a unique individual. That's in an embryology textbook, I assume. Prior to his abortion advocacy, former Planned Parenthood president, Dr. Alan Guttmacher, was perplexed that anyone, much less a medical doctor, would question this. This all seems so simple and evident that it's difficult to picture a time when it wasn't part of common knowledge, he wrote in his book of Life in the Making a number of years ago. Scientifically, and again I refer you to point of special interest. Philosophically, we can say that embryos are less developed than newborns, or for that matter, than toddlers, but this difference is not morally significant in the way abortion advocates need it to be. Consider the claim that the immediate capacity for self-awareness bestows value on human beings. Have to be aware of yourself before you're fully human. Notice that this is not an argument, but an arbitrary assertion. How do you know that? How do you prove that? Why is development needed? Why is some development needed? And why is this particular degree of development, that is higher brain function, decisive rather than some other development, such as heart or other things? These are questions that abortion advocates do not adequately address. As Stephen Schwartz points out, there is no morally significant difference between the embryo that you once were and the adult that you are today. Differences of size, level of development, environment, and degree of dependency are not relevant such that we can say you had no rights at an earlier stage, but you do have rights today, even going clear back to embryo. Think of the acronym SLED as a helpful reminder. Size. True, embryos are smaller than newborns and adults, but why is that relevant? Do we really want to say that large people are more human than small ones? Men are generally larger than women, but that doesn't mean they deserve more rights, does it? Unless, of course, they become women, then they can get anything. Size doesn't equal value. Level of development. True, embryos and fetuses are less developed than the adults that they will become one day. But again, why is that relevant? 4-year-old girls are less developed than 14-year-old ones. Should the younger children have less right than their older siblings? Okay, I don't think I'm going to get through a page before the bell rings. Environment. Where you are has no bearing on who you are. Does your value change when you cross the street or roll over in bed? Again, just common sense stuff if we stop to think of them or point them out. And degree of dependency. If viability makes us human, then all those who depend on insulin or kidney medication are not valuable and we may kill them. And then challenge your listeners to be intellectually honest. Ask those tough questions and give them the chance to consider these things that probably they've never thought of and have never had pointed out. You can go to that pro-life, that website I told you, and you can read that whole article. God, help us in our day through the fullness of His Spirit. God, stir us and enable us to once again be culture-changing salt and light. And this is a realm that our culture needs changed in. So maybe we could say, come alive in 2025. Thank you, and the Lord bless you.